Okay, so I am calling to order a regular meeting of the Committee on Ordinance for the Holyoke City Council. Tonight is July 21st. It's 6:37 p.m. The members present are myself, I'm the chair, Rebecca Lisi, Holyoke City Councilor at Large. We do have the vice chair, Juan Anderson Burgos, joining us, representing Ward 6. The Ward 2 City Councilor on the committee is Terry Murphy. The Ward 4 City Councilor on the committee is Libby Hernandez. And then the Ward 5 City Councilor on the committee is Linda Vacan. All are present. I'll let you call your meeting to order, Eileen, and then we can begin the public hearings.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to open the joint planning board meeting and ordinance meeting for Tuesday, July 21st, 2020.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Present. I will state that present are planning board members John Kelly, myself, Eileen Regan, I'm the chair, Kate Kuckemeyer, and Mimi Panish.
Great. And then Ordinance Committee needs to open our public hearing on item number 2 rather. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There is a motion that has been made and seconded to proceed with item number 1 on the agenda, which is a joint public hearing of the Ordinance Committee and the Planning Board that addresses an effort to enhance access and security for our residents, food access and security for our residents during these uncertain times, and that we expedited a backyard chicken ordinance as well as a review of the permitting process for community gardens to ensure that it facilitates easy access and use of such sites. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay, so last time I think we were really very much in information gathering mode, and since then we had a working group breakout, which consisted of members of both the Ordinance Committee, the Planning Board, multiple members of City Hall staff, some of whom are on the call with us tonight, such as Sean Gonzalez from the Board of Health, Jeff Burkott from the Planning Department, Damian Cody from the Building Department, Eric Velez, who is the Animal Control Officer. We've also circulated a copy to TJO, TJ O'Connor, who manages some of the animal issues in the city, and representing TJO, we have Pam Peebles on the call with us tonight. So this is going to be a little bit different format, I expect, than what we did last time. It was, again, we were in information gathering mode last time, and so we really highlighted, just the concerns of the different, agencies or bodies in government. Also heard a lot from the public, just in terms of their thoughts on the matter. But now we have a draft copy of an ordinance. The draft is in the chat. And then there's a number of supporting documents that the draft relies on in making some amendments. So what I should also, there was an email that went out to both committees that looked at some of the outstanding issues in the draft ordinance and tried to address some of those pending issues. I think that one of the best ways to get started here would be having someone from the Planning Department, maybe Jeff, since you worked on the draft firsthand, just walking us very, I guess, simply, like, through the draft ordinance and how you guys organized it. And then from there, we could talk about some of the outstanding issues and the back and forth that the working group had around those issues. And then we could hear from the public in terms of those outstanding issues, because I think those are the only things that we really need to hear about at this point. Of course, once we actually open up for public comment, any member of the public can make any comment they want at this point.
Okay, sure. So, I mean, I'm going to try to be somewhat brief with this just because a lot of the nuts and bolts of this may not even be a zoning ordinance. So, for us, we were looking at it more in terms of dimensionally speaking, use related by zone, and later where it can be located. There's a lot of other aspects to this that don't perhaps fall with under a zoning ordinance, but rather would fall under perhaps a board of health regulation or the code of ordinances. But so, primarily we were trying to make it as easy as we could. And, so looking to the suggested amendments document, obviously we need to add some definitions. So, we're defining what a hen is. We're defining what a coop is. And then, moving along, I don't know if you want me to read them. Obviously, everyone should have a copy or has access to the copy there. But then going through the table of permitted uses under 442, it turns out that a game bird, in fact, is not a chicken. So therefore, we added the chicken 7 or more would be allowed by right in an RA district. But because obviously, as of this draft, the next coop and run up to 6 hens would be allowed in any of the residential zones. Arguably, anything greater than that, could be considered a manufacturing use or agricultural use as you get into the larger scale, by a large scale chicken farm, say, but that's not what we were focused on. We were focused on getting the chickens into the residential districts for smaller, primarily, I guess it's always said more eggs, say, or more egg laying hens, that kind of thing. And then, that was, I think, primarily it for the actual zoning amendments. I know that there were other statements actually looking at because it says current section 1412, I believe that's the code of ordinances. That's not something that we necessarily regulate ourselves. So, zoning ordinance wise, it's primarily what you see on this first page. So that's all I think I can represent at this point from the zoning ordinance perspective.
Okay, and then before I move on to, no, that's fine. So let's just talk about some of the outstanding issues and the way that they seem to be addressed at this point in time. So one of the first outstanding issues was, will hens be kept by individuals with either a permit, some sort of registration, or will it be by right with prescriptive regulations? And it seems that the Board of Health has a preference for permits. The Board of Health suggests a $20 permit fee. And this is based on inspection rates because the Board of Health employees, the inspectors, are paid $40 an hour. And conservatively, the Board of Health director estimates that an inspection will take 20 to 30 minutes. The state does require annual inspections. And so they feel that $20 is representative of the time that it would take to do the inspection and any sort of associated paperwork related to processing the permit. I think that within the, yes?
Did you say that you wanted us just to call out or use the raise hand function for the meeting?
We can use the raise hand function. I don't know if we're at that point just yet. I think we wanted to go through everything and then sort of have a discussion about everything that's been proposed. But if you want to break things down one at a time, we could do that as well.
All right. I just had a specific question on the zoning part, but I'm happy to wait.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And when we do get to the public comment part of it all, we will want the participants to raise their hand at that point. Okay, so Board of Health has a preference for a permit, $20. It's based on the inspections and the hourly rate, as well as any processing of the paperwork and permit itself. The working group did have an idea that we should be able to figure out some way of doing a low-income waiver. I don't think that the Board of Health is going to be the one to manage that, and I think that that's something that we could put off for a later date. The other thing that we liked about having some sort of like registration and interaction with the Board of Health is that it gives residents a chance to interact with City Hall, to pick up a cheat sheet or some sort of one-page handout on the zoning regulations for the keeping of hens safely and to avoid any zoning or neighborhood issues. So we also thought it would help the Board of Health to easily identify the hen holding properties, so that when they have to go out for inspections, it could be organized more neatly. So that's item number 1. Item number 2 was the minimum size per square foot for the hen. And the Board of Health recommends a minimum of 3 square feet per hen. And there was a note made that when you buy a commercial coop from like Home Depot or Tractor Supply, those commercial coops offer 4 square feet per hen, as long as we are under the expectation that we're not allowing more than 6 hens on a property. So then there's also, beyond the coop, like what's the minimum size square feet per hen for the run or the pen enclosure. And then we were looking at Chickapoo's ordinance, and they have 10 square feet per hen in the run. This is something that works for the Board of Health as well, and they suggest borrowing the whole paragraph for convenience related to the enclosures. The one thing to note here is that the language in this paragraph in the Chicopee ordinance talks about disinfecting the coop. It must happen at least 3 times a year. And I think that we need to, in terms of definitions, define that disinfecting is not the same as cleaning, and the cleaning should be happening much more often. On-site slaughter was an outstanding issue. It seems that this is regulated by CMR 105 at the state level, and we do not have to regulate this any further locally, although we should, the Board of Health recommends that we on-site slaughter for direct consumption should not be regulated. However, slaughter for retail sales should be expressly prohibited in the ordinance. And then it says, unless the required state permits and inspections have been obtained. So I think we want to put a sidebar there and say that slaughter for retail sale is expressly prohibited. Setback requirements for the coop and associated run. Again, Chicopee requires 15 feet from any sideline, rear line, or public way, 50 feet from any abutting structure, and 50 feet from any drinking water supply. And the Board of Health noted that they actually recommend 100 feet from any water surface. And they actually like the language in the Lawrence ordinance better. They also think that, again, referring to the Lawrence ordinance, there should be some sort of like notification of abutters, not that the abutters need to approve, but that the abutters need to be notified that the coop and pen are being erected. Manure management plan, there's very specific language here. The means for manure management talks about compost poultry manure in sealed containers. Appropriate disposal of poultry fecal waste is imperative to reduce the risk of human infection. Owners should be required compost poultry litter in a manner that allows for pathogen die-off, prevents animal contact with the waste, and prevents contamination of the environment with poultry manure.
Rebecca, should be provided by whom?
What do you mean by that?
You just said that hen owners should be provided appropriate materials for disposal of the waste.
I don't think it's provided, but required. Required.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Sorry.
Owners should be required to compost poultry litter in a manner that allows for pathogen die-off, prevents animal contact with the waste, and prevents contamination of the environment with poultry manure. Yep.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, my bad.
Seventh outstanding issue was the requirements to ensure that the coop/run is secured against pests and predators. We were talking about chicken wire, although our animal control officer actually is suggesting a chain link fence instead of chicken wire for durability, and then suggests 5 feet with a roof or 6 feet without a roof. There's also some conversation about if the enclosure should be dug down into a trench to ensure that the pests don't get in from underneath. So making sure that the fence goes down some feet as well, or some number of inches. Food storage requirements are the 8th outstanding issue. So a secure weatherproof container, this should be defined as having some locking mechanism or latch, not necessarily a key, but something to prevent entry by raccoons and other similar animals. Raccoons have agile hands and are pretty smart. Rubbermaid, however, makes totes that have snapping latches as part of the lid. And then some of the other issues that were discussed that weren't actually outstanding in the draft that was circulated was discussion about heaters. There seems to be an aversion to having heaters in the coop, even in the winter, because from what we understand, it does create health problems for the hens and also poses fire hazard. Board of Health agrees, although there is an outstanding question now about lighting, because the hens lay eggs depending on the available light cycle. And I think we'll hear a little bit more from Eric on that. Soil testing was an issue that was raised by a resident at the previous public hearing. And Cynthia, who I can't catch in my screen so easily, Cynthia was able to do some research, and she found that UMass Soil and Plant Nutrient Testing Lab has been doing routine soil analysis and particle size analysis since the price for a routine soil test is $20, plus you could add some of the extra analysis or tests to your soil if you wish to. But the routine soil analysis does include a lead screening in the soil, and Cynthia provided the website. We also thought that if lead levels did come back, if the soil tested and did come back with heightened lead levels, soil mitigation could be an option for residents, where they dig out a certain number of inches down into their lawn, their backyard, and are able to refill it with new topsoil that wouldn't be contaminated, and that would be able to help mitigate the issue. But this would largely be up to the residents. And I think the most we could do here is provide some resources for how to deal with soil mitigation and contamination issues. And then salmonella control. So there should be, requiring veterinary care for sick birds or flocks. There's also other related illnesses beyond salmonella that the veterinary care would be able to address. Proper disposal of dead animals. We should define in the ordinance the proper methods for disposal if there is a dead animal. And then also line treatment of the soil, which I believe is to kill off any pathogens that would be in the manure. Board of Health Director could correct me if I'm wrong. The Board of Health Director also wanted to lift some language from the Lawrence document under their regulations. And Sean, I don't know if you want to talk about those items and give us an overview of why you think those items are important, but I could turn things over to you here.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sean Gonsalves. I'm the Director of the Board of Health. Really, the reason I wanted to lift a lot of these is that they're already written out in a concise manner, and a lot of them are really practical. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 items that I wanted to take out of a list from Lawrence that's about 20 items long. And some of them are as simple as, item 3, which is the applicant shall notify abutters in writing of the request to keep hens on applicant's property. That's a pretty typical process for a lot of things that you can apply for in the city, certain types of buildings, certain businesses that you're building on your, like opening on your property. You know, some of the other ones, for instance, 6 hen house structures will not interfere with any utility or other feature of the property that needs suitable access. So for instance, you know, it won't obstruct a door or obstruct a fire escape or a fence, you know, or like a gate or access to a utility pole. That just is sort of a common sense item. Another one would be 7. Hen house structures will be located in a well-drained area that does not discharge on a public way or a neighbor's property. Again, just sort of a common sense idea that's already been written out by somebody else, and so we can just easily borrow that language. You know, one that's a little bit more serious would be, you know, 19, which would be if the Board of Health or its agent determines that the hens causes disturbances on or damage to neighboring property or public areas, the Board of Health or its agent may require that the hens be immediately removed at owner's expense. And I think that's sort of part of one of the needed areas here, which is when you issue a permit, almost all other permits have, if the permit regulations or rules are broken or not followed, there's some enforcement language. And so I think there needs to be some enforcement language that goes along with this, and that's conveniently written already. And I think it's pretty clear about why the Board of Health would be taking those actions, and we can elaborate a little more on that, but the basic concept there, I think, is one that's useful to borrow for ours.
Great.
So.
And Eric, I know that we referred to you a couple of times in this overview related to lighting, and then also related to the chain link fence. So I don't know if you want to comment on those items here.
Sure. I recently emailed out a link to a site that says the prairiehomestead.com speaks about the supplemental lighting for chickens and such, and some of the do's and don'ts for supplemental lighting in the chicken coops, which work. And understanding that here in New England, we don't always have the most sunlight certain times of the year. This article talks about the decreased sunlight, daylight, molting, temperature changes, and such, and the importance, more importantly than anything, of chickens, egg-laying hens needing 14 to 16 hours of lighting for healthy eggs.
I think the other part of that, Rebecca, not to interrupt, is just if lights were going to be installed, maybe a line about seeking a permit if you're going to install, you know, electrical fixture, just as part of that. You know, people are going to have lights. We don't want extension cords running through a backyard or something of that nature.
Right, and that would be like any other sort of electrical permit that you would pull for accessory structures. Okay. And then let's see. I wanted to also give Pam Peebles from TJ O'Connor a chance to comment on the draft or any outstanding issues that they want to raise. Pam, are you on the call with us? I see her name, but perhaps
Muted.
she's muted at the moment.
She
might have stepped away, and we could come back to her then. I do see that Councilor McGivern, Joe McGivern, at large city councilor, has joined us on the call, so I'll just acknowledge him, as well as our planning and economic development director, Marcos Marrero. Thanks for joining us. Pam, did you unmute?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Hi. Great, you could go ahead if you have comments that you want us to take heed of, or anything that you want to say in terms of things that you think are missing, or anything that you want to comment on in terms of the draft that we circulated.
Thank you. I appreciate there's a lot of consideration gone into that, and it shows a lot of effort, so thank you. I would like to, if possible, if I can defer to Hannah Ornstein. Hannah is also on this Zoom call, and she is animal control supervisor, which oversees all field activities for TJO. And she's put a lot of thought into this, and I'm sure she'll cover everything, but I can jump in if she doesn't.
Great. Hannah, what's your last name?
Orenstein.
Okay, and you're representing TJ O'Connor?
Yes.
Great. Take it away.
Thank you. Actually, in rereading this today, it looks like a lot of our initial concerns have actually already been addressed. Certainly, if there are things I missed, Pam, fill in. I think at this point, my first concern, and I apologize if this was addressed in previous meetings, is the issue of roosters. I know obviously roosters would not be permitted, but in the event that somebody buys young hens or young chickens and it turns out that they get a rooster or two in there, what is the city's recourse? And along that same line as Sean, what is the enforcement? Does that fall to Eric? Does that fall to TJO? Or if this is a permit process, does that fall to building, planning, zoning department? And my other concern was, it looks like in the different districts where this may be permitted, some of the buildings are multi-unit. It looks like maybe upwards of 20, 40, or 60 units. So we're just unclear about how that applies in really large multi-unit buildings. Does that mean 6 hens per unit or just for the entire property? That was just something we weren't clear about yet.
So we can answer that. I think in the document, it talks about how there would be only up to 6 hens per property. Okay. Where it was laid out. So if you're not the property owner and you want to have the hens, then you need to get permission from the property owner. And, you know, if there are multiple tenants in, I guess, a building on a single piece of property, you would then have to get like landlord permission because they would be the property owner, and it would only be, you know, one set of 6 hens.
Great. Thank you.
And then Rebecca, who would take the ultimate responsibility, the hen owner or the property owner?
The permit would lay with the hen owner.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else?
Has it been addressed regarding if roosters are on the property, or what the enforcement aspect is, or what the city is that still waiting to be vetted?
I think we've discussed that roosters would be prohibited, but I think you raise a really good point about what the recourse is. I know that our Board of Health director talked about how when people get chicks, you actually can't determine the sex of the chicks until there's so many, you know, weeks old.
I'd love to make a comment on that.
Who is that?
Christine Burns. I'm sorry, I don't have my camera on.
It's not public comment yet, so I'm going to ask you to hold your comment on that item until we get to the public comment portion. Thank you. Yeah, so I think we still need to figure out the recourse and who the enforcing officer is, because I think that there are some things that we should be relying to Board of Health and the Animal Control Officer immediately. So like the rooster issue sounds like something that would be a Board of Health issue as opposed to like the zoning ordinance. Mm-hmm. Some of the earlier items that Jeff Burkott went through in terms of like the dimensions of the coop and everything else, those seem to be more squarely part of the zoning ordinance. And then these regulations would be part of the City of Holyoke's ordinances, but I think that they would be enforced by the Board of Health. But this is not completely hammered out yet, so it's something that we need to continue to keep an eye on. And then if you have other items, you're welcome to go ahead.
I don't know if Pam does, but I think those are really my main concerns at this point.
Can I jump in? This is Pam. Is that okay?
Yep.
There was just two things that one thing we really liked, and I'm not sure if it was proposed or where it was, but that including kind of, someone's been calling, I think referring to a cheat sheet about minimum care put right next to best practices, and what a difference that would be when you look at minimum care standards and best practices. So I think we're hugely in support of that as a document that's provided to each hen owner. And I think the other thing that brought up real concerns, or we weren't sure what the direction of the discussion was going is slaughter on the premises, that raises a number of concerns, not which the least of which is disease transmission and concern about spread of diseases with what's left behind during and after slaughter and how that's disposed of.
Right. I think I'm just looking through these notes here. Perhaps, Sean, you could speak to that more easily than I can because I have to look up in my notes here.
Yeah, I do believe in Mass you are allowed to slaughter animals for consumption in your own home, but we do want to make sure that slaughter that would be for sale, commercial slaughter, would be prohibited unless you go through the state approval and permitting process. And I do think the disposal of, dead birds and any offal that is created from, slaughter of the hens for consumption, those instructions can sort of be grouped together. But I do believe in discussion that we've had that slaughter for home consumption is something that is by right in Massachusetts. That's my understanding, and feel free to correct me if I'm mistaken.
Pam, does that satisfy you for now, or?
Yes, in reading the one of the attachments, the framework to reduce pathogens, one of the interesting things they talk about is the risk of spread through slaughter. And I was just thinking of it from that viewpoint, but I don't have enough knowledge to know how serious that is and whether the majority of municipalities go with or against. But yes, it is a permit, it is allowed in Massachusetts to do your own slaughter.
If I may, I have a question for Mr. Gonsalves. I'm wondering if the minimum standards and sort of the best practice, if those would be given to the permit applicant at the time that the permit was approved. For example, one thing that I know we haven't addressed here is clean water for the birds. I know that they require clean water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it can't be frozen. So there has to be some way, and I think it would be important for someone who was just getting into chicken raising that they be aware of that, that, spring, summer, winter, and fall, most notably winter, they have to provide fresh, clean water, not ice, to the chickens. And so would things like this would fall under best practice, I would think, and also minimum standards, really, but would those be given to the person at the time of the permitting?
Ideally, what I think we'd like to do, and this was discussed at the last public hearing, I think when you took out a permit application, it might be best to just have, maybe it's a few pages, because it seems like there's a lot of information that we'd like to, but maybe one page it's about coops and what's expected, and one page is about the health of the birds and best practices, and that could be right on the application. Some of our application packs are, they're 10 pages because they have a lot of supporting documents. So, having 3 or 4 pages on that application, and probably need to be in, English and Spanish, the supporting documents.
Right.
So, but I think it would make sense that if you have an application, you can't have an application without a best practices document being attached to it.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone from the planning board want to make any comments before we move on to opening the public comments portion of the hearing?
I had a hand.
I'd just like to give an instruction for the impending public comment section so that people can start getting started on that. So if you're a member of the public and not currently a co-host, so therefore not a member of city staff or either of the two bodies present here, you should see a raise hand function on the bottom of your screen on either the phone app or the computer app for Zoom. Please click raise hand in order to signal that you have a public comment. And Councilor Lisi, with your permission, I'd be happy to just like call on people for that, or you can as well, whichever you'd prefer.
If you're going to be monitoring the hands being raised, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, when people raise their hands, it'll appear next to their name in the participants pane, and I also I see the question from Natalie, and I will address that in a moment. You'll see a raised hand next to the person's name in the participants pane. That's to the right of the screen.
So if
so I'll be happy to monitor the participants pane to see if anybody's raising their hand.
Okay, I think I'll take care of it, but if you want to support me, if I'm missing something, definitely let me know.
Sure. Yeah, I'll send you a message if there's anything. Got it.
Just also a reminder to folks who would raise their hand and wish to speak to please state your name and address for our transcription records.
Thanks for that, Chair Regan. So from the
I have one question. Yes. Well, okay.
I think Kate Crookmeyer and Mimi Canich both would like to speak. So Kate, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'm really pleased to see how far this has come in the last since we had the last hearing so recently. My one question, I was unclear because there's two different documents. There's the document you posted of the draft, and then there's something else that was circulated to us. What exactly at this point is the proposal for setbacks? Because I know you said 15 feet, but there was a different, you said 15 feet, but the draft that was posted on the chat said 5 feet and 8 feet. And to me, I actually think that my concern with the 15 feet is, I'm not planning on having backyard chickens, but I went, just for laughs out into my backyard and measured where I would have to put the chicken coop if it was 15 feet. And I really I don't have the smallest yard in town, but there's hardly a way for me to get a chicken coop into my yard with a 15-foot setback without basically taking up my entire yard or making it unusable for any other purpose. And I guess I'm really behind the idea of the larger setbacks from other people's dwellings and from water sources, but it seems to me that for many parts of Holyoke, a 15-foot setback is going to be much too big for people to actually then be able to access this this option.
Right, and I think this is one of the points that's up for discussion. We see what neighboring communities are doing. We heard from the Board of Health, just sort of saying yes, those setbacks work, but we can absolutely consider like different setbacks. And I take your point, well, that perhaps smaller setbacks from property lines make sense.
Just to follow up on that, I think actually if we, for instance, if in my yard, say if it was 15 foot from the property line, the neighbors would all be able to see it. Whereas if it was 5 feet and 8 feet from the property line, it would be behind my fence and the neighbors wouldn't see it. So I actually think that the smaller setback might speak well to, when Sean brought up the Lawrence document, one of the items was, screening it from neighboring properties. And I think actually in this case, being closer to the property line for many people would actually make it less obtrusive to their neighbors. So, I mean, I guess one of my questions is, like since if I'm correct, then can it follow the same setbacks as other accessory structures rather than having a larger setback, since other structures are 5 and 8 feet rather than 15 feet? I think that would make sense, but maybe there's a little bit of a need for boots on the ground, like people going out to some folks who are interested in chickens and really taking a measuring tape and seeing where if it fits.
Mm-hmm. I saw Jeff Burkott nodding his head, and I think Sean wants to weigh in on this as well.
Kate, yeah, thank you. Kate, one thing that when we were drafting it or looking at this and making the amendments as within the draft, we were looking at it as being an accessory structure. So therefore, that's the 5 feet from a side and 8 foot from the rear.
Which
And
I
so
think
We'll
basi-
makes
just
sense,
mimic
but
everything else that we have.
there was a different document that still said
Okay.
15, so I wanted clarification.
Okay, yeah, okay. But so that's how we were looking at it, and within the zoning ordinance draft amendments.
Okay, so unless there are objections, we're moving towards the zoning as for other accessory structures at 5 and 8 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, from a Board of Health standpoint, I agree that the priority may be maintaining distances from other dwellings. And that's mostly to adhere with some of the noise requirements and visibility. But yeah, if there's no neighboring structure, I don't see the need for 15 feet being a mandate if it's, say, the alley that's right there.
Great. Thank you.
Great, thank you all for that. And then Mimi, you wanted to chime in on this?
Yeah, I had a handful of things. The first one is, I think, probably very simple to address. When you look at the new chart of uses, we've got 7+ hens in RA districts and 6 and fewer in a bunch of other districts. I assume that it is mere oversight that we don't allow in this draft people to have fewer than 7 hens in an RA district. I would think that there's no reason that just because you're in an RA district, you would necessarily want to have a full farm operation. And presumably we can fix that if there isn't some reason I'm unaware of by just adding RA to the chart that allows for 6 or fewer hens with, you know, all of the associated requirements. So that was the first one. The second one is the idea of having the Board of Health able to remove hens if they are creating a nuisance makes all the sense in the world. But I think we need to at least think about what happens if there is some sort of neighbor dispute. You know, if your neighbors are just harassing you, whether by allowing their roosters to run into your yard all the time, or because they hate that you have chickens alone. So ideally, there would be some sort of dispute resolution before the nuclear option kicks in.
Okay.
You know, just because if you're doing everything right and you just happen to have a neighbor who is mad at you for some reason, you should not come and find that the Board of Health has seized all of your chickens. And I see that Sean has weighed in to say, how about an appeal process? And, you know, I'm sure we can work something out on this. An appeal might not be the best solution merely because you don't want to have to store the hens somewhere while you're considering whether to give them back to their owner or not. But, you know, I'm sure that some process should be developed or can be developed. I just wanted to raise that point. And the final one is, I'm not sure we've really thought about how this impacts our existing as of right chicken owners. I know Christine Burns is on the call and she keeps chickens, so she may be a useful expert to discuss this with. But, you know, I know that there are other actual farming operations still in Holyoke, and there are other people in RA districts who keep chickens. And I think it's worth both talking to them for their experience and making sure that we're not suddenly going to be asking them to tear up their coops and put in something completely different.
So being able to create a grandfathering aspect of sorts.
Yeah, and in fact, I see that Christine has her hand raised on the screen, and I know it would be kind of out of order since she's a member of the public, but this might be a good time to actually let her weigh in if everybody else agrees.
Why don't we just go ahead and open the public hearing part of the
Rebecca.
Okay, so then, sorry, Linda, I did not see your hand, so go ahead.
Thank you. So getting back to the original question on the different residential zones included, my question is particularly related to the state law relative to slaughtering the chickens. I think we really need to see that law. We certainly have discretion in terms of where we allow the chickens to be kept or not. And if we're going to expand to all the residential zones, I'd want to be very careful about understanding that slaughter language in the law. I just have a hard time picturing something in R20, 40, or 60 with a slaughter function associated with it. So I just think we need to have a better understanding of that. The other comment that I wanted to add is that there are other farm operations in the RA zone. And I want to be sure that whatever we do with this, we do not in any way restrict what rights these property owners have today. And that's in concert with what Mimi was raising just recently. The other thing I would like to have considered is we have a lot of predatory birds, and I've been made aware of people raising chickens having their chickens removed by hawks or eagles or other birds if they have been in a coop that does not have a roof. So I would just raise that as a point of consideration. And I think the discussion around the buffers is important, and I think it will be particularly more important if right near a dwelling. I think we're going to need to be cautious and respectful of the rights of the people who want to keep the hens, and also the rights of the neighbors to have a peaceful existence in the neighborhood. So I think there really has to be some kind of a process there, short of neighborhood feuds, which are a completely different thing and can arise over anything and almost everything. And then a question that I have is for Pam Peebles. I'm not sure how much experience there's been with the allowing of hens in the residential urban areas. And I'm curious if they've had to do hen rescues like we read about cats and dogs, if there's any experience in that regard. So if she has it, I'd be interested in hearing that.
I think either Pam or Hannah can respond to that question. I know Chicopee would be another urban community. I don't know if TGO has a presence in Chicopee, and you know what the volume of, I guess, hen rescue or right, is that the question that you're asking, Councilor Bacon? Yeah, the volume of calls you're getting on backyard chickens.
I'd be happy to chime in, and Pam can add to this. TJO covers Springfield, Holyoke, and Chicopee, and currently is the only community that allows permits or allows hens by permit. I'd have to have our software company draft a specific report to find out how many chicken related calls we go on, but I will tell you it is not an insignificant number. That includes Chicopee, even the town that does allow them currently. Oftentimes these are for chickens that have gotten out of their coops, that are running stray, that have been attacked by animals. It house a number of chickens and roosters at TJO annually. The majority of them come in as strays. These are not game birds. These are not fighting animals. These are people's pets or food products that have gotten loose. So we do deal with them very often, more so than I would like.
And
very helpful. Thank you.
Let's see.
If I could just chime in about the slaughter quickly to answer Bacon's question. So there was a document issued by the Department of Public Health in 2001, and it was revised in 2015. The document number is FP-03, and the issue is slaughtering and processing of meat and poultry. And what it says is meat and poultry intended for sale as food. All domesticated meat and poultry whose product is intended for sale must be slaughtered and processed in an U.S. Department of Agriculture, Food Safety, and Inspection Service inspected facility, which is sort of what I referenced in my reply to the email that was sent out. And then the next part, to answer your question directly, is meat and poultry raised for private use and slaughtered and processed by the owner. It says individuals who raise meat and poultry for personal use and slaughter and process the animals may do so without first obtaining a permit from MDPH, that's Mass Department of Public Health, or the local Board of Health, within whose jurisdiction the slaughtering and processing occurs. The product generated from the slaughtering and processing may not be sold or given away and is solely for use of the owner of the animal, his, her immediate family members, and or non-paying guests. So Department of Health says if you raise domesticated chickens, you can slaughter them for your personal consumption by right.
Okay, thank you. I think that's an important thing to consider as we craft this zoning ordinance. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, and let's see. Jeff, I don't know if you just want to speak briefly to the chart of uses and the issue that Mimi raised related to 7 in RA, but not 6, and if there's a conflict there, or if it actually is addressed somewhere else.
Well, it turns out it's all sloppy proofreading, so never mind.
Okay.
Yeah, it's listed as, you know, basically you can have up to 6 under that one provision or 7 or more in an RA.
Okay. So I think then we should open the public comment portion of the meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion is made and seconded from the Ordinance Committee to open the public hearing, allow members of the public to speak. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. And then Eileen?
Yeah, I would entertain a motion to open the planning board meeting to allow the public to speak.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go down the line here, and I may have to loop back around, but first is Christine Burns. When anyone from the public speaks, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Christine Burns. I live at 226 Rock Valley Road in Holyoke. Excuse me that I don't have my video on. This meeting was so important to me, but I was released from the hospital 2 hours ago after surgery yesterday. Wow. Nobody wants to see my real face. So I have some comments of my own, but I would first like to address a couple things Linda said, and maybe educate some people. A chicken coop is a house. It can be a shed. It is totally enclosed. At night, the girls go in and you shut them in, to keep them safe from predators. So I've never in my experience, even as a member of the Pioneer Valley Backyard Chicken Association, knowing many people here in Rock Valley, as well as being part of the Pioneer Valley Coop Tour, seen a coop that did not have a roof. That's like having a shed without a roof. I think what she's referring to is the run. And I'm going to talk to you about aerial predators. First of all, we've been raising chickens here in Rock Valley for about 10 years. We currently have 15 layers. Aerial predators will not enter a run unless they can leave with a full wingspan, because they can't carry a chicken out. So they can get in, but they can't leave with anything. They're smarter than that. And having a roof over a run is cumbersome, and we've seen people do it with, when we've gone to visit other people that have put chicken wire on top, or chain link even. We have an 8-foot high chain link fence around our whole run with a gate that we walk in as humans. But over the top, we have strings of rope that crisscross. We have had hawks stand on the roof of our chicken coop and not go in. That is really all you need, is a ball of twine or rope from Job Lot, because when you put covering, it can get bogged down in snow. It can certainly get bogged down in leaves and sticks. And having a roof over your run for somebody that raises chickens continually makes absolutely no sense. If this were to pass, and if this became something in Holyoke, I believe that there are many of us here in Rock Valley, or a few of us, who would love to be on some kind of advisory panel or mentors for people who are looking to have chickens. With that said, as far as your run is concerned, people have 4 and 5 foot high runs. We went with 8, but it needs to be buried down about 6 inches. Our chain link is buried 6 inches. That is adequate. And the Pioneer Valley Backyard Chicken Association recommends a 6-inch, not 2 feet, not 5 feet, 6 inches. And that has been sufficient. We have never lost the girl to a predator when they are in their run or their house. truthfully, the only time we have ever lost a chicken to a predator is from somebody's licensed dog that was out. So, and that's the absolute truth because I witnessed it. If I ever see the dog, I'm going to run him over. You know, it was me. So that is the truth as far as like really dealing with predators are, concerned. Chicken wire buried down with adequate poles and secured properly would be fine. A chain link fence we were able to get inexpensively. And yes, raccoons are strong, but if you do it right and you secure it, that's all you need. Some of the things that I'm hearing simply are making it cost prohibitive for people to have the hens. And if we're talking about affordable, nutritious food access, we're severely limiting that by saying, oh, you need to have electricity run out. Well, the truth is that in winter, when winter comes, we line up shepherd's hooks out to our coop and we run a 100-foot extension cord into a power strip where there's a secured can light on the ceiling that simply provides a little bit of extra light. It's not a heater. It is the heater bulb. So if it gets below 0, it does take the edge off for them, but they're very, very hardy. And our coop is closed up in winter with windows, so there's no air flowing through. But we run an extension cord out and we have a heating pan that sits under their water inside of their coop that just keeps it from freezing. And really, there's nothing wrong with that. It is cost prohibitive to think that even me living out here would be able to afford that, to have that to have to require to somebody to run electricity out. It's true you do get less eggs with less light, but you'll still get some, but they do need water. I know in the beginning, some people I knew used to take rocks and put them in their oven and heat them and put them in the big reservoir of the water and do that every few hours. And that keeps the water from freezing. It doesn't have to be hot water. It just has to be not frozen water. So there's ways around that again. And people that do that know it again, which is why I think mentoring might be an option for the city of Holyoke. Yeah. And lastly, I'd like to speak to roosters. People, and I'm speaking from people I know who do it, not just me. So I say people. People who raise hens for eggs don't want roosters. We order our chickens to get only hens and certain breeds because we like all the different colors. But the truth is that there is a flawed system in what they call sexing the eggs, and sometimes you get a rooster, and sometimes you don't know you have a rooster until they're a little bit bigger. Generally, people that do that will go into the pot. The roosters, even with 15 girls and one rooster, that rooster stresses those girls out so much that they don't lay. So if you are keeping a rooster with only a few chickens, you're defeating your purpose of having eggs, because they literally are constantly on those girls. They get so stressed out. They will lose their feathers. It was terrible to witness this year, because when we did get one rooster, I was lucky to hitch up with a farmer that was happy to take on a rooster. And I just said, don't ask, don't tell, I don't want to know. But there's very few people that I know that raise hens for eggs that want to have roosters. The last thing I would like to speak about, and I know that the law says that we can slaughter, we do not slaughter, and you could slaughter for personal use. And I understand that makes some people uncomfortable, even if it's for personal use. But I don't know anybody that doesn't wonder if their next door neighbor is catching fish and coming home and cleaning that fish to eat. And when people get a fishing license, I don't think that that's part of the conversation. So again, those are just my comments as a person who's raised chickens for a really long time with my family. And truthfully, there's no better way for your child to grow up than to really understand where their food is coming from and to having access to fresh food. So thank you.
Thanks. Christine, could you just clarify one thing? I know you said that you have a chain link fence, that fence is 8 feet tall, 6 feet buried under the ground. You said that lighting like electrical lighting would be cost prohibitive, but what was your comment related to the chain link fence versus chicken wire?
Well, let me just clarify that it's buried 6 inches, not 6 feet.
Ah, sorry, think about that.
That's okay. So we did start out with chicken wire, and we had really good luck with it. We were just able to get some chain link fence when we built a bigger coop. So we were getting a chain link fence on Craigslist for very cheap. But the chicken wire can work well with the small holes. If you secure it properly, you bury it well, and you have good poles, that are well into the ground and all that. It's really about making sure it's secured well to the sides of, to the sides of the coop. Some people will have the chicken wire secured to the sides of the coop. So just when the girls walk out is their front run. Our chicken coop is actually inside the run. So the girls can walk around, the whole area to get shade in certain times of day or whatever. But if it's well secured and secured properly, it is very difficult for any kind of small animal predator to get in.
Thank you for that.
So Rebecca, back to my question, it's relative to number 7, where it looked like the group was talking about coop/run. So it wasn't clear whether the roof comment under number 7, I interpreted it to mean the coop, but perhaps that whole section is related to the run.
I think that the comments that Eric offered, they're in blue.
Correct.
Yeah. So that was related to comments about the run that Eric offered.
Because the title of it says coop/run, and so that is what led to my question relative to that. Thank you.
Councilor Lisi, we were only suggesting a roof for the coop. If that is in question, or if that was clear. The idea of the comment on there, I realize now it looks a little vague. We were saying 5 feet of height of fencing around the coop with a roof, and 6 feet if no roof is what the comment was.
The roof on the coop.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thanks, Christine. We're moving on to Neftali Duran. Name and address for the record.
Thank you. I'm gonna turn on my camera for this. Thank you, Councilwoman. And my name is Neftali Duran, and I live at 11 Arbor Way in Holyoke. I think that I'm just gonna second a lot of things that Christine already mentioned, and add just emphasize once again that as a community member that has been involved in this process, I am absolutely not advocating for roosters. So I just want to be very clear for the record. And in the case that there is a rooster that comes in with hens that people purchase, I have professional and personal relationships with a lot of the farms in the Pioneer Valley, and I'll be more than happy to facilitate taking away roosters if someone doesn't want to deal with them. As a community member, we are also in the process of forming an organization here in Holyoke of people that are concerned about food justice and food access, and regarding lighting and water temperature. As soon as we form this organization, which is gonna be within the next few weeks, we will be more than happy to work with to work with everyone to make sure that we secure grants for people that cannot afford lighting or water heaters. There are options that are solar, and they will work perfectly fine for the winter. As someone that has kept chickens for many years outside of Holyoke, we know that the production is gonna go down, and we also know I also have experienced, sadly, a lot of loss of chickens due to predators, but there is a risk that we take to be able to ensure to be able to make sure that I know where my food is coming from. As I said before, I'm more than happy to work on a lot of these issues, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Next in line is Guy O'Donnell. Address for the record, please.
Hi, yes, I'm at 367 Alphamont Highway. And I'll make my comments quick. I spoke last time too. I just think that in these uncertain times, especially the pandemic, it is especially important to make sure that we know where our food is coming from and having that food security. So I'm really glad that we are taking this up. What I just want to talk about briefly here is I want to make sure that we're making sure this is accessible and affordable to everyone. And a couple of things that just stuck out to me was the vet requirement for one. I've taken a cat to a vet. It's very expensive. So I want to make sure that like that requirement is set in a way where it's not going to be cost prohibitive to people. Also talking about the chain link fence, we do not have chain link fence for our chickens. We've had them 6 years, never had any problems with predators. We had a hawk take a swipe at them once, but she got away. We use welded wire fence, which works well, and I don't see why chicken wire fence couldn't work well if put in correctly as well. And then one other thing I saw was the manure being in a sealed container for 120 days, like one of those big barrels, which I think could be a big issue too. I know sealed containers make for anaerobic breakdown of things, which actually makes things more smelly, not less smelly. Plus, if it needs to be for 120 days, and you're going to need to have several of those barrels, and it's a lot of extra work to go take up their manure and put it in a special place. It can be composted with the rest of your food waste. So those are three things that stuck out to me that I thought I'd mention. But yeah, I hope that, that we can make this as accessible and affordable as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving down the list here, I don't believe I see other hands raised in the queue here, so I'm just going to go to hands raised on the screen. I see Mike McManus.
Hi, my name is Mike McManus. I live at 57 Nonotuck Street. One of the concerns I have is with the setback distance. I saw a reference to 50 feet for a setback, but even 15 feet in my neighborhood with abutting structures would make it really difficult for myself and also all my neighbors in the block that I'm in to site a coop. Just given that everybody, well, not everybody, but there's a lot of detached garages. I have a garage. 3 of my abutting neighbors have detached garages. So if those are considered abutting structures, and I'm not sure if they are per ordinance or code, it would make it difficult to site a coop and a run in my backyard. Regarding the chain link versus chicken wire, I think that the chain link would be a bit excessive. I think chicken wire should be sufficient to build a coop and a run. The chain link, just it comes off as being excessive, as other people have mentioned. With the heaters and the lighting in the winter, we've had chickens in another community in South Hadley, and in the winter we would just change their water daily to prevent freezing, so we didn't need heaters or additional lighting for the hens. And then the manure, and to kind of echo on what Guy was saying with the manure regulations, that also seems excessive to put everything into a bin. 6 hens aren't going to generate that much manure. It could be added to backyard compost that people generate with grass clippings or other food waste generated in the house. And while I understand that there could be concerns about diseases and other pathogens from the chickens, and a properly managed backyard composting facility, those concerns should be mitigated. And then my other concerns have been answered. I guess one question I would have for the Board of Health would be, we talked about gifting the slaughtered chickens, but what about gifting eggs from the chickens? I mean, if you have a family of 4 with 6 laying hens, they could produce more eggs than a family could consume in a given week. And there's only so much baking that can be done. And after that, one thing that I know is done is to gift the eggs to family and neighbors as a goodwill.
So I could just answer 2 of those. So the first one about the eggs, you don't need a food permit to distribute fresh eggs, unpasteurized eggs like that. But I do think we should have some language about, and if you look at the Lawrence document, I guess I keep referencing that, but they do have a line in there about the storage of eggs and the minimum, allowable temperature for the storage of eggs so they're safe. And so, I mean, I think we're talking about the possibility of having people who are sort of new to chicken keeping. And so we just put a byline in there about, here's how you handle eggs that you're going to give out. I think that would be simple enough. But also that we just need to be mindful of how those eggs are being handled. I see people sometimes in rural communities leaving them in coolers at the end of the driveway. And I'm just concerned about people getting eggs randomly and getting sick. The second part about the manure, I do think we need to have something written in there, because while I think some of the assumptions about composting make sense on single family homes, when we're talking about some of these larger 30-unit apartment building, I don't know that realistically someone can have a chicken coop and then also be composting in an area that's shared with that many other people. You're talking about a single tenant now taking up a significant portion of a shared space. And I think there's also a chance that you're going to have disputes between multifamily homes about, I don't want there to be chicken poop out in the yard, in a compost pile. So I think there does need to be some guidance. If it's not a 55-gallon drum, which is what was suggested in the document that was from Boston University that was provided by the community working group, there should be some idea about what disposal looks like, because this isn't always just, I own a house and this is my backyard. Many of these new areas we're opening up to are going to be shared spaces, and this might lead to neighborly disputes, and that's exactly what we want to avoid.
Thanks for that, Sean. So in queue, I see Margot Wise raising her hand. I just want to make a note for anyone who's on the call. If you want to raise your hand to speak, you could go down to participants at the bottom of your screen. You click on participants, and then there should be an option, like a button for you to raise your hand. If it's too complicated, I'll still take raised visible hands at the end of the queue. So sorry, Margot, and then Chelsea. Address for the record?
Hi, 50 Francis Avenue. So, hi, I'm Margot. My background is in plant and soil science. So I first wanted to address what Sean was just talking about with the compost. So yeah, I think it's very possible for even multifamily homes to have a pretty unobtrusive compost bin that wouldn't be offensive to anyone. I mean, I have compost in my backyard, and I have neighbors that bring food scraps and stuff, and it's pretty much low to no odor. And I just can't see anyone really complaining about that, especially if it's well aerated. If you're turning it every so often, it's actually the opposite of, containing it in a drum. Aerating the compost actually reduces the odor and increases the microbial breakdown, basically. And I wanted to address the concern about the lead in the soil potentially getting into the eggs that people are going to eat. And it's definitely like a real concern. But my first reaction is kind of like, well, the city doesn't regulate where people plant tomato plants that they're going to eat. And they might be doing it in lead soils. So I don't think we should be regulating whether people have chickens on lead soils. But like Councilor Lisi said at the beginning, I do think we should provide resources so that we can keep people safe. There's three main ways I know to remediate urban soils that are contaminated with lead without having to remove them and replace with new soil, which would be pretty costly, I think, to a homeowner. The first way actually is to add organic matter, which is compost. So by adding organic matter to the soil, you raise the pH. Lead is a cationic metal, so it becomes less bioavailable the more alkaline the soil is, and the more compost you add to the soil, the more alkaline it becomes. The microorganisms bind to the lead and immobilize it. So that would be the first line of defense. You could also add phosphorus to the soil, which decreases the availability of lead to plants. And then after you've done that and waited some time, you could create a green cap by sheet mulching. And sorry, I should explain what sheet mulching is. Putting cardboard on top of the soil, and then some compost and mulch on top of that. The cardboard will eventually break down, but what you're doing is basically building the soil up. So you've already immobilized the lead in the soil and decreased the availability of lead to the plants. And then in addition to that, you're just building it up. So I do think people should test for lead. I do think they should become educated and take these measures, but they definitely would not have to remove the soil and replace it. And yeah, having a backyard compost pile along with backyard chickens is kind of a no-brainer. I would want chickens for the manure just as much as for the eggs, personally, for my garden. And it just shows how much hens are part of an urban agriculture ecosystem. And I'm really excited about how far this has come, and all the thought that everyone is really putting into it is just makes me think that if it happens, we'll be prepared for any potential thing that comes up. Thank you.
Council Lisi, just real quick on the compost pile, I have no arguments about that compost can be a beneficial process. Again, just in a shared space, a 30-unit apartment building, an unsupervised compost pile that has chicken manure in it is an area for children to possibly get into. And I think in that article from BU, it sort of elaborates that you want to limit access to that material. So I'm not arguing that compost can be an effective way of disposing of the manure. It's just in shared spaces. If you're not there to watch it all day, there are other people using that space. And if you have an open pile or a bin or anything else and you go to work, you have to account for the other people in the space. So it's just something to be mindful of, that you can't possibly rationalize everything people are going to do in a shared space during the day.
Thank you. I see we lost Chair Regan, but we're getting her back. Chelsea Gazzillo has her hand up.
All right.
Address for the record?
Thanks,
good,
Council.
yeah. Oh, thank you, Daddy.
You're good.
Okay, thanks, Councilwoman Lisi. My name is Chelsea Gazzillo. I live at 79 Lawler Street. I'm going to echo a lot of what other people have said. And I also testified at the last public hearing at the end of June, and have been a part of the public process to influence the hen ordinance. And I would just like to address some of the things that came up on this call. The first thing is that somebody, I think it was the Board of Health, Sean, you may have brought up this idea of giving folks directions when they submitted an application to register their hens. And one thing that has come up for us, and Naphtali brought up this group that we are forming here in Holyoke, is offering hen school to folks that were going to register or sign up for a permit for backyard hens. And so that would be something that I think the group that we are forming would be interested in helping the city coordinate. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that somebody or the Board of Health said that the state requires that individuals that own backyard hens are supposed to be permitted by the state. And when I look at MDR's website, I read the law differently. I think what it requires is that no one can buy or sell chickens unless said chicken is from an inspected certified flock. So that does not mean that somebody that has backyard hens is required to be permitted by the state. I think it just means you're required to be permitted if you are buying or selling a chicken. So that would be something I would urge the Board of Health to look further into. And then the last thing that I also wanted to bring up that is on MDR's website, or there's two more things I want to bring up. The idea of a manure management plan. I know Rebecca sent around some language that I had found from the city of Cambridge and from MDR's website on a manure management plan. And like many other community members have said, there are many ways that folks can manage manure. There's direct application to your garden. There is collection for compost, which you can look at the Department of Environmental Protection's website at the state for more information. And then there's disposal in the trash. Larger quantities may require hiring for removal services. But from my gathering and from what I found in my research, it does seem to be that having a manure management plan in place would be a good thing for hen owners, and that is something that maybe we could work with hen owners to create as part of this hen school. And then finally, egg donations should be covered under the Good Samaritan Act. And hold on, there may be one more thing. And so that's what I would leave it with. And I do work for American Farmland Trust and am more than happy to dig up more information and read more of these articles or help the city navigate MDR's website as much as I can. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. American Farmland Trust also hosts the Farmland Information Center, and we offer services to municipalities like Holyoke in trying to configure how to develop these ordinances and what best practices would be.
Councilor Lisi, just a thought. I know a manure plan and manure disposal has come up several times. I know this initially was attached to a community garden sort of review as well. Is there any way of linking maybe some of this newly available manure to the community gardens in a way where it could be made available? So if you have it at your house and you want to get rid of it, it can be brought somewhere that it could be donated to the community gardens as a manure source. And that's sort of a low cost or free way to move this useful material around.
Yeah, I think because there's so much to consider, we wanted as the planning board and ordinance committee to really take up one piece of these items one at a time. But I'm probably going to refile something about the community gardens and then we can deal with it there. But I think overall, we should figure out a way that we can talk about manure management and then offer a set of options. I feel like, in terms of if there's soil mitigation or if there's if you need to mitigate your soil, I feel like Margot just offered 3 different options for how you can do that. We're not going to tell you which one, but we could provide, resources. You can figure out which one works for, where you're at and what you have to deal with. And I think similarly, we should put some basic outlines into the manure management part of the ordinance, but then on that cheat sheet that people pick up from the Board of Health with the permits and best practices. There we could outline more details for how you would manage manure if you were in this sort of situation or that situation. Like if you have a compost pile, you know, this is how you would do it, and it would require that you, you know, are the property owner or something like that. I mean, I think that's the direction that we should go in there. It shouldn't be like overly prescriptive, because I do think that it's not going to be a one size fits all sort of option, and we should provide the ability for people to find the right option that is the best practice for the particular situation that they're in. Okay, so I see Kate's hand up, but I do see a couple of other folks on the call that are just residents, and I want to make sure that they're not interested in speaking in the public comment portion. So if you are interested in speaking as a member of the public, and you haven't been able to raise your hand electronically, if you want to raise your hand physically, I can call on you that way. So I see Kendall.
Sorry, hi, I'm Kendall. I live at 314 Mackenzie Avenue in Holyoke. And I just wanted to express my support for what you're all doing here. And yeah, I'm an avid gardener and would love some manure for my gardens. I don't particularly want to raise chickens myself, but I would love to have a resource of manure in our community. So yeah, I'm in support. That's pretty much all I have to say. I think it's great, and I'm here to listen.
Great,
so
thanks for
that. Yeah, thank you for organizing all this.
Thanks for your comment. I see Anya Duffy has raised her hand. Anya. All right, Anya, I think you're on mute. I think we just unmuted you. There we go. The sound is not coming through. You are not muted. No. Okay, you'll call in with the phone. Sure. And then, let's see, Jim? Helene?
I'm just finding this all very interesting. I'm just observing, but thank you.
Okay, so we're just waiting for Anya to call in, and it might take a while for it to come up on the line here. But Kate, you had your hand up from the planning board. Do you want to make a comment while we're waiting for Anya to connect?
Sure, and this is more a comment as a public citizen than a planning board member, but in terms of the manure management and composting, just to mention that another option, I mean, we currently, I believe strongly in composting, but I don't have the wherewithal or the time to do it myself. So we currently pay a statewide service to take our compost material and then bring us back compost. And they also take small animal waste. I assume they would take chicken waste. So I think that that's, you know, that might be a model, that might be an option for some people, but I would actually love to be able to donate or even pay a local organization to take my compost. You know, I think that it would be great if we could, you know, a vision for the future perhaps is having a way that people can compost locally, even if they aren't going to do it on their own lot, and to have that be sliding scale or something like that.
Maybe our DPW can have a compost pile.
I know that some other municipalities do it.
Okay, so Anya, I think, has connected with the phone. Anya, do you want to make some comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good.
We just lost you, though. I think she hung up by accident. That's okay. If you want, you can type your comments in the side here and they will be captured as part of the public record. If you want to type your comments into the chat box. And then lastly, I do see Jim up there. Jim, do you want to speak? I'm gonna need to unmute you. Hold on. Do I have that ability?
Yeah.
I think he has to approve my unmute. Jim, if you want to speak, you are muted presently. No. Curtis, can you help here? I'm not able to.
Yeah, I've already clicked unmute once, but sometimes it lags a bit when you try to do it on this end. Jim, can you currently hear me speaking?
I see his mouth moving. That's the only thing that is concerning me.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. I know this is frustrating. Let me.
It's okay. It might have been that you and I were both hitting unmute and not letting
No,
it.
I kept my hand off the trigger for a second there just to make sure I didn't do that too. Let's. Jim, hang on a sec. I'm going to try something. If you can go on to the next comment.
I think we're wrapping up the comments here, unless no, I do think that we're wrapping up the comments here, and the only reason why I'm interested in Jim is because he's moving his mouth, and I feel like we're not giving him a chance to speak. Oh. I will see if we could get Jim to put comments in the chat box. So Jim, if you go to the computer and look at the screen.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
There you go. No, everything I heard tonight sounded really good, and I just have one thing, because I'm from, actually I live in Lower Wards. I live down on North Bridge Street.
What's the number on North Bridge Street?
46 North Bridge Street.
Thank you.
And there's just so much, I like the idea about giving the manure to people that could use it for gardens or something, but I go back quite a ways, and it's funny because I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm not no spring chicken, but years ago, my grandfather, I remember him living in his house and telling me that he had 14 kids, and that's how he fed his kids. He had chickens, and he had a run in the backyard. And, you know, I just hope that they pass it, and that, you know, I would love to see it. You know, I appreciate everything everybody's doing, and you know, that's going on. But, no, and I would even say 6 chickens is enough. You know, if you get 6 chickens, and what somebody was saying is to gift the eggs. You know, if I had them, I'd give them to family members. You know, and pass them on, because I got a family like there's 3 of us in the house, and having 5 or 6 chickens, I don't think I wouldn't eat that many eggs. So, but I have a large family, so. But I appreciate everybody, and like I said, it's really, you know, something I would love to see passed. So. And I'd be open to any suggestions.
Thank you for the comments.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that we got, I'm just going to read Anya's public comment into the record, since she did have some issues there. I do think that there already has been a little bit of back and forth with the health department, but so Anya Duffy is at 118 Sycamore Street, and she's making comments on the zoning setbacks. It's important to define what a structure, quote unquote, is. As mentioned by Mike McManus, meeting a 50 foot setback from a structure would be nearly impossible in most of the lots in my neighborhood. Additionally, the 15-foot setback from a lot line for a coop seems prohibitive. I also echo the sentiment that the chain link fence is excessive and a wire fence installed properly should be sufficient. Thank you for that. Okay, so again, I think we got a lot of comments back on the draft and some of the outstanding issues that remained, you know, from the draft, and we are getting a ton of really great feedback. I really do appreciate. Oh,
yep.
Sorry, we have one more person putting their hand up. It seems.
I did. Can you hear?
Yes, there we go. Devon.
You said it right. Yes. Hi, I am not from Holyoke. I'm Devon Whitney Deal, 694 South Churchshire Road in Conway. Is it okay if I have a public opinion comment?
Yes, you are.
I waited till the end because I saw Sean's last comment about, and this is how I interpreted it, Sean, and if I didn't interpret it correctly, you can let me know. But he made a comment off of Anya's post that you don't feel the chain link fence is sufficient.
No, that's replying to Kelsey's comment. I'm sorry, they're not in line because the chat is sort of first come, first served.
Okay. Sorry. No. Great. I related it to the chain link fence, and I guess I'll just state this anyway. I work with over 275 farmers across the valley in all 3 counties, and many of them have chickens. And I'm hearing this conversation. I am from Boston. I lived in the city for more than half my life. So I'm very familiar what city life is like. I lived in the projects, so public housing. And, you know, I really just need to stress from in the outside world here, the fact that this needs to be accessible to all people of income levels, and just not those that are privileged enough to have enough money to raise chickens. So farmers in the valley, I assure you, do not have chain link fences for their chicken coops. They can't afford it. And I can't afford it here where I am. I've had wire fencing for 20 years now, and I have not had to replace it yet. So it does work. I do appreciate you all even considering this, because I think that even when you're talking 6 chickens in a community, if many of them do take advantage of having 6, I know that can seem like a lot. And on the other hand, I think if you're providing guidance when they are getting the permit, that's really all people need. If Neftali and his group really do form and have this hen school, I think that is more than sufficient. There are groups locally too that you can refer people to in conversation if they have questions about raising the chickens. I personally do feel like with some of these state regulations that you're bringing up, like you mentioned also coolers, and the fact that eggs in coolers are not safe. I disagree. I work with many farms, many towns themselves allow coolers as long as you keep them at a 41-degree temperature, and you can do that with ice. So I would just urge you to give that consideration. Not everybody needs to have those eggs in a refrigerator in order to
what I was referring to is just making sure that they are at a sufficient temperature, not that coolers are inherently unsafe.
Okay, but you did mention coolers, so I'd love that just clarity to be put out there. So thank you for giving this consideration, and I am on the outside of the world, really eager to see you all take a leading step for Holyoke to give your community members access to something they really need. So thank you.
Thank you. And I do see one more hand from Andres Clark.
Thank you. I was just inspired by all the people talking at the end here. I don't currently have a permanent address, but I feel as though the setback, I would like the setback to be a little bit flexible because as Michael stated, 6 hens can produce a lot of food. And if your neighbor, if you have a coop that maybe is within that buffer zone or that setback zone, and it's within a structure on their property, but they're okay with you giving them some chickens in return to being within that setback, I don't believe that the city should be getting in the way of neighbors kind of becoming neighborly or becoming friendly. I think that there should be some flexibility. This is people cultivating food for themselves. I think it's kind of new to American society. I mean, modern American urban society. I don't know. That's not necessarily true, but it's not as common. So I think there should be some flexibility with this.
Thanks. And can you give us a non-permanent address for the record? Because we do have to record names and addresses.
Sure. It's 203 Cheltenham Road in Newark, Delaware.
Thank you. Okay, so again, I think that we have done a really extensive job going through the draft document, talking about the outstanding issues, hearing some back and forth, both from experts in the field, folks in the planning and department and board of health, as well as TJO O'Connor was an invaluable resource for us on the call here this evening. I think that this needs to go back to the working group. So the way that the working group worked on this previous draft was through like an iterative process where the community members and then the city hall staff did a little bit of a back and forth on drafts and comments. And I think for the next one, we do want to get more folks on the call together having the back and forth, because there were definitely some challenges in interpreting like what the substantive differences were, or the meaning was, or just being able to look up CMR easily. The expertise and experience that you all have in City Hall when it comes to just talking about these issues with ease and in an accessible way, and in a practical way for how residents are going to interact with the ordinance once it's crafted, and how it's going to how they're going to interact with your offices is, I think, becoming more and more important as we drill down. I know that there's been some scheduling issues in terms of before and after 5, so I'll see if we can find some daytime moments to meet, perhaps like a lunch hour for those that are not in City Hall. Could be something that works, but I think we've gotten so much information and we've made so much progress that we really need to work more closely and collaboratively on some of these finer tuning details. Other comments from any other counselors or planning board members before we wrap up the meeting here? Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, first of all, I've really been listening for both of these 2 meetings and learning a lot. But I do have some concerns, and with the animal control in Thomas O'Connor, I would like to know, to get that report from what happened in Chicopee. She indicated that they've had a number of cases. I also would like to know where chicken or hen farming is allowed in Chicopee, what zones it is allowed there. So those are 2 questions I would have. I do have, I do think this is a zoning issue to start with, and I do think hearing the idea of trying to make sure neighbors get along with neighbors, I think the potential impact of doing this the right way and getting it so that we basically are testing it, if you will, and saying, oh, look, we did this and we have no problems, or we have very few problems and we've been able to handle it. I certainly think that neighbors not only being notified, but having some significant input.
Anya, do you want to make some comment?
Someone else is trying to make comments. Rebecca.
You're fine.
Okay. So, I mean, I do think that's something I would definitely like to see involved here, that we have more involvement with giving neighbors, I don't know if I give them veto, but I certainly need to give them more input into whether or not they are in favor. Whatever zone they're in, I mean, right now especially if you're talking in some of the other zones, and I like the idea of trying to do it in the high density zones. And again, I think when we consider that, if I'm in an 8 apartment unit and apartment unit 3 wants to have a hen house, but I'm in, and the other 7 tenants don't want that, are those tenants given the authority? Because right now, are they considered neighbors, or is it just the landlord? I mean, those are all questions that I think we need to discuss, so that I don't want this to happen and find out that we create animosity in neighborhoods. I want it to, whatever we do, I want it to be happening so that we create, as the young man just said, and I'd like to have you have a home, young man. But you're welcome. You touch base with me, we'll talk. But I would like to have neighbors really appreciating neighbors and working together. And if there's a problem, this is how we're going to resolve the problem. And I think right now, as it is, we're working towards that, but we certainly haven't gotten to that point. So those are all the things that I think need to be emphasized. I think we need to, so far, if you notice, almost everybody, I think, has been involved in our meetings, has been in favor of it. But I also know I've heard from people that have concerns. And those concerns are the kind of things that I'm bringing up here. And again, I don't think they're opposed necessarily, but I think they want to have input if it's going to impact the house next door to them. And I've read some articles trying to get myself prepared for this in terms of pros and cons, and by people that were advocates of having hen houses, but even they brought up some concerns, and fencing was a concern, and animals were a concern, and smells were a concern, and a variety of other things. So obviously, if a neighbor is too close and any of those things take place, then that creates an animosity that I don't want to see in the city. So those are my concerns. And like I said, I've listened. I haven't, and you know, I'm a pretty good talker. And I've just tried to listen and try to come up with what I think it would be the most reasonable approach to doing this. And it may very well be in the beginning that not everybody gets approval, but that once we got approval with certain areas and we had evidence that it's not causing problems and that neighbors are getting along, that it might be much easier to expand it into other areas or easier access. Thank you for your thoughts. And young man, you can look me up on the City Hall website and give me a call.
Sean, I see your hand. I do want to also note, for anyone who's contacted me, whether it's pro or con on this issue, I have a running list going, and I have always sent out the Zoom details for our public hearings. So I would encourage any other counselors that are getting calls, either in favor or against, to continue to relay the sign-in details for people to join either by phone or on computer for the Zoom meetings that we're having. Sean, I know you had your hand up and wanted to respond to some of those comments.
Yeah, there were some comments in the chat, and I just figure we might as well discuss it out of the chat so everybody has access. There were comments about why the Board of Health is asking for permitting and inspections, and essentially the reason that we feel strongly about permitting and inspections, and sort of the context of this is that the question was, we don't do this for dogs or cats or birds that live in the house. But these hens are not dogs or cats or birds that live in a house. We're talking about creating we'll call it a semi-permanent or a permanent structure in the backyard where there are setbacks and there are space requirements and there are sanitation requirements and they're a food source. And so nobody's eating a dog, nobody's eating a cat, nobody's eating the offspring of these animals. And while dog houses do exist, they're not a chicken coop. And so the only way that we're going to be able to enforce the regulations that go into specifics about setbacks and sizes and how the animals are being treated is through inspection. And with inspections, like any other process in the city, be it a building, be it a restaurant, we charge a permit fee for the inspection and administrative process. And I'm going to say that we do feel very strongly that inspections, which we already do for chickens in the areas that they're currently zoned and allowed in, that we would not want to discontinue that process. We feel that in order to address some of the concerns that Councilor Murphy, Councilor Bacon, some others have addressed about issues with neighbors, the best way to do that is to make sure that everybody's following the rules and that the coops are in good order. And if we can minimize nuisance conditions, I think there's going to be a lot less community resistance as this expands throughout Holyoke.
Sean, I thought also in the document you noted that the state does require an annual inspection.
Yeah, that I spoke with Eric about that, and Eric says that annual inspections are required by the state. Permits are not required annually by the state. Inspections are, and we locally would require a permit because this is going to start taking up a lot more of our time. You know, there's a limited number of chickens in the city that are currently, we'll say, allowed by zone, and we're talking about increasing the workload on the Board of Health to address a growing desire, and so there needs to be a matching administrative fee process. Any other department in the city that has processes like these, there is a fee associated with the permits, and so this is only keeping in with, you know, the commonly accepted practices of municipal government.
And then Councilor Hernandez.
Yes, and this question is for Sean. I know that during the chat earlier, there was a mention of, as it relates to the neighbor disputes that Councilor Murphy referred to, you were mentioning that perhaps an appeal process or some type of system like that could work to address some of the neighborly disputes that might arise from if this is implemented. Can you develop a little bit on that?
Yeah, so I mean, if you have two dogs, you know, neighbors have dogs and one dog bites another or the dogs get into a scuffle, many times we have to have a hearing about a dog bite, either a dog biting another dog or a dog biting a person. Even if it's minor, sometimes there's a process in place where we have a dangerous dog hearing, for instance, and we discuss the methods that we need to take to address the issue, and then also let both parties speak to what they believe contributed to the issue. And I have to think that if there are going to be neighborly disputes, we don't want to just say, okay, we got a complaint, let's swoop in there and remove all the birds. I think there needs to be a process where we consider the circumstances and what's leading to the issue. And many times during an appeal process or a hearing, you're able to resolve some of those issues by addressing a shared concern or through compromise. So if there's an issue that they think the chickens are causing an odor and they want the chickens removed, perhaps we change their you know, their manure management. Or if they think that the birds are being too loud, maybe there's some sort of noise dampening. It's difficult to anticipate every complaint that someone would have about chickens, but I'm sure they're going to arise, and having a formal process to deal with them that's not just enforcement, I think would be valuable. And then also, if somebody has a dog and the dog attacks a chicken, which was mentioned earlier by somebody who was speaking, I don't want I think we need to address how we do that. I don't think a dog who's naturally curious or, you know, might injure a bird needs to be euthanized immediately, but someone who owns that bird and has an emotional attachment to it might feel like that's a necessary step, you know, and we get that when a dog is bitten by another dog. So I do think that there needs to be a defined process about how we handle animal on animal issues, and then person on animal issues as well.
Right. Thank you for that. Okay, I think we're at the end of the meeting here. We do need to continue this hearing to a date certain. I'm not sure if Chair Regan has a sense of what the schedule is for the planning board coming up. It may be that we're not meeting until September, but I'm not sure what the schedule looks like.
Yeah, well, I know our meeting schedule is every second and fourth Tuesday, is our regular scheduled meeting, and we don't stop for the summer. I assume that the city council is going on hiatus for some portion of the summer.
We meet once over the summer on August 4th.
Okay.
But it doesn't stop committees from meeting. In fact, we had our meeting this evening, and then next Tuesday we will actually be meeting again. I do think that we try to anticipate that people are, taking family vacations and things like that. So I don't want to overschedule our August, but if you have availability on one of those Tuesdays in August, we can make that work. We'll have to just make sure that we have a quorum of the members present.
Unfortunately, I don't have. I do know what was on the schedule as of our last meeting, but I know that things may have been added. So I can get back to you on that. I'd have to get in touch with. Or Jeff, are you there?
Yeah.
We need to actually continue it to a date and time. So
Right.
we need to figure this out.
So you may be more familiar with what's been added to our schedule.
Well, I mean, at this point, all we've got is, we've got two things, one definite and one potential on the 11th, but we've got nothing on the 25th of August.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, our September.
So that might be
September, we've got the 8th and 22nd are as of now.
But we could do either of the August dates, right?
Well, August 11th, right now we have a definite meeting that's going to last at least an hour, and we have another potential hearing.
Oh, okay.
August 25th, we've got nothing, and potentially September 8th and 22nd, we are loaded.
Well, it sounds like August 25th is the
25th would be the best, yeah. And what about for the community meetings? The community groups meeting.
The like the working group?
Yeah, the working group. I'm sorry.
I'll send another doodle poll around with some daytime options as well as after 5 options to see if we could get some more folks at the table at the same time.
All right. But for a joint ordinance and planning board meeting, I guess the 25th looks best. And for us, the time certain should be probably 6:30, Jeff?
Well, I mean, I know that's when ordinance typically meets. We normally meet at 5:30.
Yeah.
I'll be away that date, Rebecca.
Okay, so then we're down to 4. I do have the other council members on the phone here, on the call here. So councilors Anderson Burgos and Hernandez and Murphy, are you available on the 25th as far as you know now?
As far as I know now, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, for Councilor Hernandez and then Councilor Anderson Burgos. Looking at the calendar, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm looking at the calendar, and currently it looks like I am available on the 25th.
Great. Okay. Do you want to make that motion then?
So moved, yes.
To continue the public hearing?
August 25th?
So I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing of the Ordinance Committee to August 25th at 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
And then is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded to continue to August 25th at 6:30 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay, and I too would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for the Joint Ordinance Committee Public Planning Board to August 25th at 6:30.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will meet then on the 25th.
Great. Everyone, thanks so much for your time. I know these are long meetings and they're very detailed meetings, so thanks for your attention and your time here.
All right, very good.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
Everybody.
Good night.
Motion to adjourn the city council meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Aye.
All right, motion to adjourn the planning board meeting.
So moved.
I think they adjourned.
I think they're gone.
All right, okay, good night.
So long.